I think it's great for accelerating understanding of what's possible and helping to push some of the boundaries forward. It's negative in that people are very strange beings. I think we've all been slightly poisoned by films over the years. We've all seen Terminator.
Yes.
And that sits in people's minds. Every single business has work needs that are not met. There are admin tasks that aren't being done. There are roles that they struggle to hire for or struggle to retain talent for. And I think ultimately, as more and more of these artificial intelligence capabilities are made within the work environment and are embodied within robots, you'll see the same for the cost of work. So essentially, the activities that society didn't ever really enjoy doing will be able to be done by automation through robots and AI.
Welcome to the Business Sense podcast. I'm Garry Crosby. This is the podcast where we make sense of the business journey by talking to owners about what they've learnt along the way. Let's jump into today's episode. Well, good morning, Tim. Thanks for joining me.
Great to be here.
I've been looking forward to this conversation. All about artificial intelligence. And one of the things, of course, it's very much in the news right now, and we're seeing a lot of people talking about it, some people apocalyptically. But the question I wanted to start with was the fact that AI has jumped out of the laboratory. You know, we go back to, was it November the 30th when ChatGPT was released? Yeah. Is now in the hands of the people. Is that good or bad?
I think it's great for accelerating understanding of what's possible and helping to push some of the boundaries forward. It's negative in that people are very strange beings, and some of the inputs that are being put into these tools are out there on a spectrum.
Right.
So some of that data, as it's fed back in as training data, has to be filtered because people ask for weird and wonderful and horrible things.
Is it? I mean, it strikes me that when you see people debating, and there's been a lot of it recently, that the internet was potentially a very good thing, and then it was a very bad thing, and it turned out to be the sewer of the world. Are we looking at similar things here, where AI will come out into the mainstream, and there'll be a lot of very obvious good done, but then a lot of nefarious activity?
I don't think there'll be a lot of nefarious activity. I think generally the internet was a thing for good. Yeah. But people are on a spectrum from near angels to near devils.
Yes.
And so you'll always get people that use tools in questionable ways. And I think so there will be bad actors who choose to take certain tools in certain ways. I think disinformation is a significant risk.
Yeah.
But generally, I think AI will be a tool for good.
And there's a new acronym that's just seemed to have popped certainly into my sort of area of visibility, this idea of AGI, the difference between artificial intelligence and artificial general intelligence. Can you talk us through that? What's going on there?
So artificial general intelligence has long been the goal for many that have worked in artificial intelligence. I'd say up until very recently, I used to enjoy saying that artificial intelligence is neither artificial nor intelligent. And I think that is changing, that view. And I think as we're moving closer and closer towards elements of general intelligence, it's a fascinating time. So really what we're seeing with these large language models is they are autoregressive token predictors. They're very good at guessing the next word in sequence.
Yes.
There's not a lot of intelligence in them. I'll show a demo later on the sort of the furthest reaches that you can get with GPT-4 in terms of intelligence. Right. But they're not on a path to general intelligence. Where if you look at things like what Sanctuary are doing in terms of how they embody AGI into robots, they are on a path towards how we actually build reusable, reliable, general purpose work robots. And that requires a level of artificial general intelligence that moves beyond just this forward forecast of tokens in sequence.
Is it a stepping stone towards, robots or systems that are as intelligent as humans? Or when we achieve AGI, have we got to that point?
I think large language models have rapidly accelerated what's possible with computing in general, and specifically with artificial intelligence, because you can ask for tasks in simple language and produce detailed text output.
Yeah.
And a lot of the learning that we as humanity have produced and documented is stored in text.
Yes.
Not all of it, but a lot of it. And so having that as input and training ability for some of these more advanced capabilities really has shifted the needle. And that's all been possible since a paper that came out from Google in 2017, attention is all you need.
So let's explore some of those potential positives. I know you work with business owners through your company, Projekt Rising, to help them understand and to utilise artificial intelligence as it exists now and what's coming along. What do you see as the potential short-term positives for business owners?
I think short-term positives, you can take a process that has a lot of waste in it and you can remove that waste. If there's repetitive manual activity, there are ways to automate it. So in that aspect, artificial intelligence, we look at it as a series of building blocks of capability, and we link those capabilities together to solve a business problem. So we can take a business that has a lot of time wasted on specific repetitive manual activity and effectively automate it reliably and on an ongoing basis, which frees the business owners and the operators within that business to work on more value-added activities. So in the short term, for a business owner, there's huge upside at generally negligible cost. The cost is offset by the benefits gained.
Yeah.
And I think that's the right way to look at it. Software development always used to have a huge expense with detailed specifications that were written out. Occasionally, some of those would be met. Generally, they would be ticked off as being met. And 6 months later, you realise that a load of things that you wanted actually weren't delivered. But that's another package of work. And I think changing that paradigm of how software is built so that you're using small, rapid delivery. I hate the term agile. But I do like sprints.
Yes.
Where you're moving the business forward in terms of their technology capability on a rapid basis. So they have something that they can play with, that they can use, that happens to be using artificial intelligence elements behind the scenes, but is seamless to them in terms of a business process. And I think that's where it really makes a difference for a business.
And are there particular sectors where this is perhaps a little bit more prevalent, where those kind of systems and processes that you've talked about are more readily benefit from the application of AI?
I think creative industries are being significantly impacted by generative AI.
Right.
And so the likes of the traditional creative and marketing agencies are leaning very heavily into what's possible with generative AI. And if you daisy chain capabilities together, you can get to 80% of the output of a deliverable very quickly, and then review that. So you're not doing away with the people that were involved in the process, but you are able to deliver a lot more in parallel quickly, and then have the human in the loop to check the quality of that work and make sure it's on brand and ready for the customer.
Yeah. Do you get the sense, I mean, I think I've spotted this a couple of times already, that you're looking at marketing output and thinking to yourself, there might not have been a human involved in that at any point.
Well, was there ever?
I mean, I think it's just that sense that it may homogenize marketing slightly, or it might make it slightly more bland unless the humans really do put the spark back into it.
I think mediocre content has now become almost free.
Yes.
Anybody can get low quality content out very quickly.
Yes. With
the right quality of prompt, with the right training materials, you can get very high quality of output that is indistinguishable from the best humans.
Yeah.
So there will be a spectrum. Are we going to be flooded by mediocre content on social channels? Yes, but stop being on social channels and then you won't see it. So there'll be an influx of, every business will be able to put out 100 blog posts. Will those blog posts get read? I don't know. We'll soon see a huge influx of animated GIF memes as soon as the text to animated GIF tools become available.
Yes.
Text to video is very, very close behind. Runway Gen 2 is incredibly capable of doing text to image on a low resolution, slightly stuttery basis, but the tools are advancing very quickly. And when you see what you can do with Midjourney for text to image, and I imagine you just add compute to that, that's a frame. If you add 25 frames of those in sequence, that's video. So you're not really that far away from high quality video very quickly from these tools, just based on throwing compute at it.
Yeah, fascinating. In the longer term then, what would be the positives that you can see coming along? Because we might see businesses adapting it at whatever pace they think is right, but if they can see a slightly longer term benefit, then that would be helpful.
I think every single business has work needs that are not met. There are admin tasks that aren't being done. There are roles that they struggle to hire for or struggle to retain talent for. And I think in the longer term, that challenge will be alleviated. Because as the cost of compute is trending towards zero, we're seeing electricity going the same way. And I think ultimately, as more and more of these artificial intelligence capabilities are made within the work environment and are embodied within robots, you'll see the same for the cost of work. So essentially, the activities that society didn't ever really enjoy doing will be able to be done by automation through robots and AI.
That's that sort of utopian 50s vision that one day nobody will have to go to work.
Yeah, how far that takes you down a path of WALL-E where everybody sits wearing their Apple Vision Pro goggles and not moving, I don't know.
Floating around on those gravity beds.
Potentially.
And just kind of, with a big soda, kind of trying to work out what to do next.
That won't be me.
So I suppose we'll have to have a look as well at the potential negatives, short-term negatives. We've touched on a couple of them. What do you think the major short-term negatives?
I think in the short term we see a significant risk of disinformation.
Yes.
I think as you look at the content that's put onto social media, onto the internet, onto the news, whether you can trust something is real is going to be a real challenge. And so the ability to create deep fakes, to replicate this interview that we're having now and to have it say completely different things, those capabilities exist now. And so you will see content that is questionable, that isn't genuine, isn't real, will be put onto social channels, will probably appear on the news. I think just in the last couple of weeks, there was a video of Putin that went live that is claimed to be completely deep fake. I don't know whether it is or not.
I did see the Pope wearing a puffer jacket.
Yeah, that was a nice one. I quite like that. Well. I think we'll see an influx of unreal content. We've always had that, but it's just going to be much easier to make. So I think we've got a real challenge around disinformation. And I think we'll see some negatives in terms of redundancies of specific roles in specific industries, where if a company shifts to using AI generative tools, they don't need as many of those people anymore. And I think with every industrial revolution, we've seen job changes. Some jobs cease to be required. A lot more were created. If you look at the roles around us now, how many of them existed before the internet? The amount of jobs created by the internet has been huge, and I think we'll see exactly the same from artificial intelligence.
Yeah, I agree. So a potential positive out of what appears initially to be negative, because that kind of public perception, robots are coming for your jobs.
But they're generally coming for the jobs you don't want.
Yeah. So the language is pretty strange. We had Stephen Bartlett interviewed Mo Godat on his podcast, Diary of a CEO, and Mo was talking about an Oppenheimer moment. We'll get to the point very soon where we wish we hadn't invented this, just like he wished he hadn't invented the nuclear bomb. Any thoughts on the language, the way that people are using this kind of apocalyptic language?
I think there's a lot of extremism present in the world, and I think there's people who have very strong views in terms of how far and how badly wrong AI could go. I think we've all been slightly poisoned by films over the years. We've all seen Terminator. And that sits in people's minds. But I think realistically, if you look at the paths where we could go with artificial intelligence, the vast majority are so heavily for good. Will there be challenges where things go wrong, where goals weren't set accurately, that caused programs effectively to follow a path that was not as intended? Quite probably. Are we looking at the point where we've created our own destruction? I guess it's not impossible, but I think there are views that we're a bootloader for our replacement. But I think for a long time we're advancing civilization through the tools that we're creating, and it's just another tool.
And it's interesting though, because these are not. I mean, the media does hype it up, but the people who are saying these things, Musk and the Google executives and people who've been invented it, and they talk particularly about the fact that one of the challenges with AI is that when you talk to the scientists and engineers who are behind it, often they don't quite understand why it does what it does. They can't seem to predict the output very well, and they lack the mechanism to control it. Is that part of the fear-mongering, the scaremongering that's come up?
I think it's part of where we are in terms of how artificial intelligence tools have been developed so far, and the heavy reliance on deep neural nets, where effectively you train it on inputs, and there's 1 trillion parameters within it, dials that can be adjusted as a number, which we don't have control of, and at the end of it, it's able to give you a beautiful sonnet about Metallica. I think as we move into more advanced adoption technologies and more closer to embodiment in terms of internal world maps and views of how a robot can interact and how AIs understand society, they're much more likely to be built in ways where they're made up of chunks that we understand. So we may use these autoregressive token predictors to help train to produce these beautiful strings of language, but that will be part of a solution rather than being all of it.
So the people who wrote the letter back in March, Musk was amongst them, and there were some other, I think even Sam Altman was co-signatory to that, the guy who runs OpenAI, and they were calling for a pause in AI. There's a little cynical bit of me who was thinking they're just trying to detract attention in the short term.
I don't think Sam signed it.
No?
But I think it was a request for pause to help other people to catch up.
Yes.
And even some of the very significant signatories subsequently announced huge AI developments.
Yes.
Including Tesla.
Yeah, of course.
Musk. So I think there is a desire for regulation to catch up a bit with the rate of technology change. Unfortunately, we're really slow as a society at putting in rules and regulations.
Yeah.
And so there is definitely a gap there in terms of the technology development rate versus the legislation to ensure that we know what we're doing. And I think the challenge that the big corporations face is they're producing tools and open source is keeping up. And if you've got 1,000, 10,000 people updating a tool in the cloud as a team who are not under centralized control, it's very difficult to legislate against that.
Yeah. And so people start to talk about the potential counters to AI. The idea that legislation, regulation is one of them. We want the governments to set some boundaries around it. Other people who perhaps don't have quite as deep an understanding as they could talk about just pulling the plug. What is the best way, in your view, to control AI as it develops in the future?
Well, Boston Dynamics have just released an updated version of their robot dog Spot, which has got a big emergency red stop button on the back.
Yes.
It's very difficult to do that in a distributed data center. But apparently OpenAI have the ability to stop any of their large language model tools from operating. If you look at some of the negative media portrayals in films, actually some of the negativity is caused by trying to stop these tools. HAL was actually only trying to reach its objective.
Yes.
Skynet went bad because somebody tried to turn it off.
Yes.
I think there are ways of controlling, but we don't have these tools they're not self-aware. So should we bake in the ability to restrict and control them and be able to stop them if things go wrong? Yes. Are we better focused on guiding the goal statements so that they're doing work for good in the first place? I think that's a far more sensible approach. If you're looking at a limited embodiment of artificial intelligence within a robot that is designed to do a work job, and it knows my job is to do this work, that's my goal statement, and I do it without harming people in terms of Asimov's rules and various other things, then the risk of that individual unit going wrong is far slimmer. The more challenging issues will be when we start putting control into financial systems, where we give artificial intelligence the ability to control a financial system, and potentially there is an issue with that, and it causes challenges or systems to break down. Because we then may not be able to stop it because we put so much reliance on these systems.
Yeah, that's interesting. And by their very distributed nature, you could pull the plug in one place and there still be that capability elsewhere.
Potentially, or there'll be multiple AIs that have the same capability and are arguing amongst themselves about the right approach.
What popped into my mind and made me smile as you were talking there was the vision of you chasing Spot around the room, trying to reach the red button and him not allowing you to do that because he knows that the red button is the off switch, so he's going to keep himself away from you.
He just uses his robot arm and his back to smash the red button.
Yeah. So regulation, and a greater understanding of AI, clearly. In the longer term, What kind of negatives do you think we might see from AI?
I think we run a risk of becoming lazy as society. I think there is a natural tendency in some to want to do as little as possible. And I think these tools and technologies will enable that capability. And so we'll see some people who choose to spend more of their time exercising, seeing the world, creating music.
Yeah.
We'll see others who choose to immerse themselves in virtual worlds and never leave a house. So I think the output of humans in society could reduce, but I don't think the output of society as a whole will. And I think how we manage that disparity in that people are currently paid for work generally. If you don't need to be paid for work and all of the work's being done by AI and embodied robots, then ensuring that the profit structures for those organizations are able to fund things like universal basic income so that people who don't want to work are able not to. And there's 2 tests being run right now in the UK on universal basic income.
Yes.
How they'll turn out when people are giving, I think it's £1,600 a month to do whatever they want, will be a very interesting experiment.
Yeah. Okay, so you did say that you were going to show us a demonstration of what AI is capable of. I'm really looking forward to seeing that. So let's get that set up and we'll come back and see what we've got.
Fantastic.
All right, Tim, we're going to use the magic problem solver. We've got it on screen here. If you're listening to this, then you can see this on the YouTube channel in terms of the full demo. We'll try and describe it as we go. But yeah, magic problem solver. What should we try, Tim?
Okay, let's try traveling to Mars in under 2 weeks.
We'll be needing some new laws of physics then for that.
Will we?
Will we? Let's find out.
I think we should make sure that the humans survive the trip.
Yeah. Is it one way or are we coming back?
Well, for now, let's just go one way. That's part of the challenge, isn't it?
So we're adding factors to this now. The problem has been stated as the travel to Mars in under 2 weeks. And the factors that we want the system to consider are human survivability, minimizing radiation poisoning.
I don't think we're going to worry about cost in this instance because
no.
we want to get there quickly.
Yes, exactly.
Cost, time and quality. Well, we said survivability. That's part of
That'll
quality, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, let's leave it at that and see how we get on.
Okay.
So this is using GPT-4, but it's using a method called Tree of Thoughts, which was published in a paper 3 weeks ago as a way of getting the absolute maximum thinking capability out of the current large language models.
Okay.
GPT-4 is as advanced as is publicly available at the moment. There are other models becoming available from other providers which are different. So Google's equivalent, Palm 2, is not quite as capable in thinking.
Right.
Anthropic have a version called Claude Next, which is coming. Okay, so it is suggesting 3 different approaches. It suggested nuclear-powered spacecraft, ion propulsion engine, and pre-deployed infrastructure. So we're now going to ask it to think a bit deeper about those ideas. So it's proposed 2, really. I don't think pre-deployed infrastructure is going to help you get there in 2 weeks.
No.
So I suspect it's going to discount that one.
Right.
But nuclear propulsion,
Yes.
I've run it previously and it decided that mini black holes might have been an approach.
Right.
But I don't think that technology is currently available.
Yes.
So hopefully it's going to be more useful here. So it's considered the detail, the probability of success, the confidence level for each of these approaches. So we can see it's more confident currently in the pre-deployed infrastructure.
Right.
Which is interesting. So we're now asking it to think on a deeper level, and this is rationalizing the different approaches.
Right.
So it's come up with 3 different solutions, and it's now thinking, okay, what are the scenarios? What are the probabilities of success? What are the likelihoods that these can actually be achieved?
Yep.
And then in the final stage, it's going to rank them in order of how likely they are to succeed. So within nuclear propulsion, we can see that it could potentially get it down to that, but we need a large budget in order to build the spacecraft.
Yeah.
Ion propulsion apparently can also get there.
Major technological advance, yes.
And financial investment. Funny, that getting to Mars seems to be quite expensive. And pre-built infrastructure on Mars can reduce travel time and lower radiation exposure. I find that one a bit challenging.
Yes.
So we'll ask it to evaluate the solutions, and now it's going to rank them in order of priority,
Right.
which it thinks is most likely to be successful.
Okay.
I'd do a drum roll on the table, but I think it might ruin the sound man's ears.
And so this tree of thought then is this progressive deepening of the evaluation and investigation.
Effectively, instead of just considering one thing and asking it a series of questions, it's asking it to consider a series of parameters against each of the solutions.
Yeah.
And then bring those solutions back to a recommendation. So it's a different way of thinking in terms of problem solving. For a computer, it's actually the way that we operate anyway.
Yes.
If we're evaluating a series of things using Six Sigma tools, we do AHP, pairwise comparison.
Yep.
And we'd effectively compare each different thing across a number of parameters and get a number at the end, which tells you which of your approaches is the best.
Makes most sense.
And so I've used that to buy cars and buy houses.
Yes.
This is now looking at how we can build that knowledge capability into an application. And so allegedly now it is evaluating the solutions and should be coming back with a recommendation soon. We shall see.
We'll give it another minute or two. Well, while we're thinking about that, let's think about, for small businesses, any business, let's not limit it to small businesses, adoption of AI is clearly something that is going to be, it's a new phenomenon, there's new technology involved. From your perspective, what do business owners need to be thinking about as they bring AI into their business?
I think it's the same challenges that it's always been. Where are the opportunities within the business to reduce time and cost? And can these tools help deliver it? And so if you're considering as a business owner, these are the challenges I've got, these are the unmet needs, these are the products I'd like to develop.
Yeah.
The question is, are any of the current technologies of AI able to help with that? And if you're not able to make that decision based on the information that's out there on your own, then seek expert help.
Okay.
So in this instance, it's come back and it's coloured them, and it's suggesting that ion propulsion is the suggested recommendation. So we're going to click on that one and see what it actually says.
First, using an ion propulsion engine can also reduce travel time to Mars to 2 weeks and prevent high radiation exposure for the crew. However, it requires a major technological advance and financial investment. Medical equipment and radiation shielding should be included for crew safety.
So it's a little bit of a glitchy video, but considering this is being run on the fly based on no prior information, we didn't know what the question was going to be asked. It's producing these avatars dynamically based on the information behind the scenes.
Interesting.
So we're using here a combination of different technologies, but effectively we're asking it to solve a problem, any problem, and then have it talk back to us in a not particularly friendly face, but it could be it could be you, Garry. In fact, for our next version, let's put you as the face of it.
That would be great. That would be great. So we talked about adoption, and you're right about the fact that in many ways it's very similar to the current day problem for business owners. I've got this challenge in the business. I've got lots of different methods. If they think that AI could be a potential solution, one of the unknowns that they've got clearly is whether or not there's going to be quite a big investment in that. It's a computer program, it's a software program. How do you see that going when it comes to the cost of business owners starting to use AI in the business?
I think we'll see low-level tools that anybody can use. So anybody can use ChatGPT, can use Midjourney, can use any of these different variety of different capabilities. And so there's a very low cost to investigate some of the potential. I think as you move to more complex implementations, there will be your traditional software providers who say, yes, we can absolutely do that for you. It's going to be £100,000.
Right.
Now, that might be okay for a corporation, but it's clearly not going to work for small, medium business owners. Our approach is we say, okay, what's the challenge that you're facing? We'll investigate, we'll produce a working prototype within 4 weeks. And we do that within a cost parameter that business will be able to afford. And we then benefit in the long term by having a recurring cost for use. And so we implement a solution that makes sense at the right price point for a business that allows them to solve a problem they've got. And then the ongoing costs are lower than the cost of doing it human with a person in the office running it.
And I guess Yeah. I see the model, and I guess there's also the added complexity of introducing this AI technology into the team, and there'll be a lot of people in the team who need to be trained or, to be part of that AI production system, if you like, or the way it's been incorporated into the business. Do you deal with that as well?
More often than not, we recommend not doing that. So change management is really hard.
Yes.
Getting people to adopt to a new technology is difficult. But if you integrate something so that it's seamless to them, so that they are, for example, putting files in a folder, those files magically get processed and get an output to the customer that they want, then they are able to use and benefit from these capabilities without having to change the way they work.
Right.
So I think more often than not, we're advising you're not putting in new fancy platforms. You're enhancing the capability that the business already does as seamlessly as possible, because it makes that change management journey much easier. And so that doesn't feel like they're adopting something new. It just feels like things are happening by magic.
Yeah. And does that then make it more complex for you to articulate a return on investment for a business owner who's going to make that initial investment and pay those ongoing charges?
Not really, because we're able to very clearly say, these are the costs of doing it currently. Here's the cost when you're doing it automated.
Yeah.
The cost per use is now X versus Y.
Yes.
So there's an immediate, very clear value statement to that, which makes it, in theory, an easy buying decision.
So for any business owner who's watching this, Tim, and who wants to explore this for the business, what's the logical next step for them to explore whether AI can help them?
Drop me a message on LinkedIn or reach out to us at hello@projectrising.com or visit our website and have a chat through there.
Yeah.
And a member of our team will guide you through the process. And we'll then talk about the process that we follow of this sort of discovery, where we do a pilot and investigate on it, run that pilot in your business to see, make sure it's working correctly and evolve it, and then into Fly, where it just operates forever seamlessly for you.
Great. Well, it was good to see the example. Interesting to see how that worked out. Now we know we can travel to Mars in 2 weeks.
Excellent.
Which is good. So something's good has come out of that. Thank you very much indeed for spending the time with me today, Tim. I mean, we could have talked for hours about AI, but it's been a really good insight. Thank you.
Thank you, Garry. And I look forward to putting you on that, the next version of the problem solver.
Copyright my face. Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.